Business is simple. It's just not easy. We focus on 3 things to help you run and grow your business more easily: talent, sales, and how to scale. This is the Talent, Sales, and Scale Show. Hey everyone, Brian Whittington with this week's Talent, Sales, and Scale Show. We have today Lindsay Lackner Davey with Authentic Sales. And she's going to really be picking up on, and the curious thing is, right, if you check her out on LinkedIn, which you should, Lindsay Lackner Davey, she talks about how to bring authenticity and humanness to first-time sellers. But I got to thinking, well, wait a second. It's not just first-time sellers. It's not just a key segment. It could be for really anyone. So how in the world do we bring bring first-time sellers to find their innate selling style? So it should be a pretty curious conversation today. So welcome to the show, Lindsay.
Thanks so much, Brian. I am thrilled to be here with you.
Yeah, we're happy to have you here. I mean, I know a lot of changes over the last couple of months from things that you were working on. So, I got to ask you because, we've read Daniel Pink's book, To Sell Is Human, and there's all kinds of other people out there saying all kinds of different things. So why should we listen to you on this idea of bringing an innate or finding your own unique selling style?
Oh, Brian, I have been waiting for this question. I am an avid podcast fan and I listen to yours. And so I knew this was coming. And I thought a lot about it. And I think that the reason that you should listen to me is because I am a practitioner. I have spent 14 years in sales, in marketing, and now in supply in very customer-facing roles. So I've struggled and I've tested, I've tweaked, I've had successes. And everything that I kind of show you or talk to you about, I've tried it. I've tried it myself. I really feel like I was, the woman in sales who made a name for herself hawking motor oil. I was a millennial who was searching for purpose in sales. And I was that first-time seller, not once, but twice, and now 3 times starting my own business. So I really think that I bring that to the table, that practical advice and guidance. And to be fair too, what I'm advocating for authenticity in sales. So I'm not going to BS you on things. I believe that we should be able to change how we sell and not who we are. So if that resonates for you, if that resonates for your audience, I would say, please listen to me.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. So all right. So you've tried a whole bunch of different things. So let me be the naysayer. I'll just whack you right off the start here. So forgive me. Let me be the naysayer. So how are you finding authenticity by trying all these other systems and approaches? Isn't being authentic just being me, and I shouldn't have to follow a system or a process or a sales strategy or different tactics? I should just be able to be me. Is that kind of being authentic, or is there a different way of approaching it?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because I think a lot of people define authenticity as just being yourself. But I think we've also found that and seen that in business scenarios, you need to push yourself outside of your comfort zone to grow. So to me, authenticity kind of happens on the axis of 2 things. So the first one is by focusing on growth, but focusing on strength, growing your strengths. So author Marcus Buckingham, what he talks about is about how we try and focus in on our weaknesses in business so often and then remediate our way to excellence. But the people who are truly successful in business, they're the ones who are focused on building up their strengths. So I guess what I'm saying is that it's not about just focusing on the weaknesses. It's not about just focusing on the strengths, but it's about finding that balance in the middle where you're being who you are, you know your sense of purpose, you know your kind of ethical direction, but you're also willing to take a chance to grow. Because, I mean, if we're just saying, I'm just going to do this my way, I'm just going to be myself, that's who I am, then you're using authenticity as an excuse not to push yourself outside of that comfort zone.
I like that. So what you're saying then, to bring true authenticity, to steal from Marcus Buckingham, we want to focus on play to those strengths. So we want to have growth with focusing on strengths. And that's so what you're talking about here is authenticity from self-awareness.
Yeah, I would say so. Authenticity from self-awareness and authenticity from a position of the other way I like to describe it is humble confidence too. So you know what you don't know, and you're working to get there.
Okay, so yeah, I call that meekness. I had a good mentor of mine that said meekness is power under control. Right? If you think about it, a massive ocean liner is a huge ship with a relatively small rudder, and that's the thing that moves you, right? If whenever I was flying airplanes, the ailerons, the things that move you on the wings, were relatively small compared to the rest of this massively large plane. So it's that meekness, that power under control, that allows us to have strength. And you really laid it out there as not having a fear of failure. Now, you didn't use that language, but it's really hey, listen, you have to put yourself out there, get outside of your comfort zone. You're going to screw up, because if you're outside of your comfort zone, you're going to screw up. But nevertheless, figure out your, from that self-awareness, play to your strengths. Don't dwell on your weaknesses. So I guess as you're going through that, and it seemed like you said you had 3 businesses that you started. The third one you were still in, right? So we had 2 others, or we on our 4th one?
Oh, so I was a first-time seller when I started my first business, babysitting, at age 12.
Oh, nice.
But I was also a first-time seller when I began my career at the ExxonMobil. And then I was a first-time seller again now. And this has been a big challenge for me, moving into selling my own business, the Authentic Sales, and selling my speaking services.
Okay. So really then you've not had to face failure from a business shutdown, or failure from, getting fired from a job or anything like that. It's the day-to-day in and out of, if you get 8 in 10, or if you have 10 attempts, you're likely going to get 8 no's. So it's that type of ongoing failure from sales, correct?
Yeah, it's that kind of ongoing persistence, even in the face of failure. And I wanted to pick up on something that you mentioned there too, about not having a fear of failure, because I think we all innately kind of have that fear of failure. So I don't think it's about not having that fear, but having the courage to to overcome it, or to push past it.
Yeah, and I think that's good. I have a bazillion kids, and one of them was studying. Not courage. What's the opposite of courage? Why am I blanking on the word here? You talk about failing in front of everyone. Cowardice, right? So he was talking about the definition of cowardice, and it said an absence of fear. And I said, you know what, bud, I would really challenge that idea, because everyone gets scared, and cowardice isn't necessarily having fear, but allowing fear to paralyze you. Cowardice is really a lack of courage, because courage is acting in spite of fear. And I think all of us have to do that, especially if we're in sales, especially if we're in entrepreneurship, and especially if we want to be on that leading edge to outgrow, out hustle, be ahead of everyone else. So I wholeheartedly agree with that. So yeah, that's a great distinction. It's not necessarily a lack of a fear, but not allowing that fear to paralyze you. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. And let me be clear too. Like I've been paralyzed by fear. Like I like to think that I have a bias for action, but I am far from perfect. And so I feel the people out there who are in those situations where it's like, I can't take another 100th call today and be hung up on, so I get it. Like what I'm talking about, it may seem like fluffy, and it may seem kind of high level. Okay, how am I actually going to get to doing this? But I've been there with those people, and I think I've found a way to move past it.
Okay, well, let's hit on that. So how have you found a way to move past it?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think part of it is, people will tell you not to take sales personally. They'll tell you, don't, it's not about you. It's not about what you're selling. It's, people are busy. They have a lot going on. So if they're saying no, they're not saying no to you. And I always found that a little tough to swallow. I find that the people who are often the the best at sales are the ones who do take it a little bit personally. So my advice on that side of things would be take it personally, but take it in and process it, and then decide when you are going to move past it. So don't kind of limit yourself to that one area where you're going to stick and you're going to get stuck on something and not be able to move on. Just accept that it is going to be personal, and sometimes it's going to hurt and it's going to suck. But then know in your heart of hearts that you can get better and you can move past that.
Yeah. So let's dive down a little bit more deeply on that. So whenever you say take it personally, like, what does that mean, or how do we take it personally? Can you unpack that a bit?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that, taking it personally, like taking a rejection personally or something like that, is maybe what you're going through in your head, maybe what you're thinking, or what I've thought about in the past is, is it something that I'm doing? Is it something, that they're reacting to about me? Maybe they don't like me as a person, or maybe they just like hate the product that I'm selling and have no interest in it, or have a past history where they don't want to buy from me or my company as a person. And I think in that sense, it's it becomes, you can kind of get into a bit of a spiral where you are focused on yourself and not kind of the service that you're doing or that you're trying to give to the customer.
No, not taking things personally, or taking things personally, but not allowing them to affect you. So a couple of things. If you look at Josh Braun, right? Josh Braun would say the reason people take it personally or allow that to hit their self-worth is because they have a low sense of self-worth. So that's a Josh Braun way of looking at it. Mm-hmm. Another way of looking at it would be this. Hey, if you're a 5-year-old kid and you go and you get a gumball, right? You go to a gumball machine, right? And so what was your favorite color gumball growing up?
Oh, purple. For
Purple.
Sure.
All right. So you go there and let's pretend you have an unlimited supply of back in the day, it's probably quarters your age, but in my day was dimes or nickels, for goodness sakes. Right. So you go there and you have an unlimited supplies of coins, and you put one in, you turn it, and you get green. Oh, green. Right. So then you give it to your friend or your brother, or you're like, especially the one that you don't like, you're here, have the green one, right? And then you just keep turning it and turning it and turning it. And it's taken you forever, but you see the purple in you there, they're in there, and you're like, I just want purple. And you just keep chucking it in there. And you're not sitting there going, oh, I'm such a poor gumball picker, right? Oh, I'm so bad at this, right? It's none of that. You just keep going, and it's no pressure. Who cares, right? And so if we take that idea from a prospecting or sales perspective, is, some will, some won't, so what, next. And we don't take it, we don't allow our self-worth to be aligned with the outcomes, right? Be tied to the process, not the outcome. So what's the process that we're going through? So I think what you're suggesting is that process is really the process of, how can I be better today than I was yesterday, knowing tomorrow I'll have to be even more, even better yet, right? So how do I do that? It seems like that's kind of what you're allowing to bubble up to the surface here.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to that personal growth comment too, right? It's sitting with something, but then it's being able to be in that zone of discomfort, and then continually pushing it out and continually pushing it past it as well.
Yeah. And again, I cannot get out of my comfort zone if I don't have that internal strength, or even if I have that self-doubt, I can't remember if it's Zig Ziglar who used to say it, right? You act as if, right? Fake it till you make it. Don't necessarily like that idea, but listen, sales is a Broadway play put on by a bunch of psychologists, as we used to say back in my Sandler days, right? It's an act. Because how many times did you sit there and go, oh my gosh, this person is so boring, I just want to leave, right? There's no way that you would hang out there with this person unless if you had a job to do. And so you have to act and pretend. And maybe you had a bad day. Maybe you had a fight with your spouse or significant other, and you spilled the coffee and you got into an accident and your cat ran away and your dog, bit you or whatever the case may be. You're having a miserable day. You can't show up and go, oh, today sucks. Let's get this over with. You got to act and pretend and be like, it's a game, right? And you have to be on. So how do we couch that reality, which isn't authentic, with pulling it back to what you said, the authenticity of your innate selling skills,
right?
Or your innate selling style?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, it's tough because in sales, there is a whole lot of, playing a game and, I'm going to do this quick trick and then I'm going to get the sale. And like, it's a short-term view, I think. So, I mean, to me, we can say like there are elements of sales that aren't authentic, that we're acting, we're playing into. But I think if you kind of change your mindset and think of, okay, these things that I'm going to play at, that I'm going to test, that I'm going to experiment with a little bit, are things that are things that may become kind of a strength or may become part of my comfort zone in the future. And you look at it that way, then I think you're in good shape. I think like when I'm talking about authenticity too, I am very much saying like, let's avoid some of those quick kind of wins just to get like the short-term game. Let's make sure that we're keeping our customers in their needs in our best interest versus going at it from a perspective of, okay, I'm going to sell you something and then I'm going to leave or hand it over to another person. And so we're done from there. So to me, that's kind of where the authentic piece of it lives, is in how you're approaching the customer, and your approach can change. We can always choose to approach something differently. We can choose to approach it in a way that's authentic or that feels authentic and feels good to us, or we can choose to kind of rely on the quick wins.
Okay. Now that's where I was hoping that you're going to go.
Okay.
So what you just laid out there is authenticity is going to happen in two places. From what I'm gaining from you here, my authenticity is going to come in two places. One, my concern, my care, my others focus for my client. So, or client or prospect or whatever you would want to call it, future client. So if I am authentic and wanting to solve their problems and help them, that's one type of authenticity. And if the other type of authenticity is I bring my own personhood to the methods, tactics, strategies to do whatever it takes to truly help this person, no matter how I feel, I'm going to take my natural who I am, my being, with leveraging these tactics and strategies, however that sounds from my voice, my personality, to ensure that I truly help this person. Is that kind of where the intersection of authenticity lands?
Yeah. So it's one part external influence. It's one part, trying to work with somebody in a way that feels authentic and where you have concern and you have care for them and a duty of care, quite frankly, from a sales perspective to our customers. But then it's also one part kind of dealing with that internal, okay, I have to grow, and this may not quite feel great at the moment, but I'm going to push past it, and I'm going to be better for it in the future.
Yeah. And one of the things that I'm always on my team on is, listen, there's a fine line between my job as the leader of the organization is to press you hard, to really test your limits, test your boundaries, to constantly grow. And there's that delicate balance between pressing too hard, pressing somebody to the point where you knock them and run them over, and then not pressing at all. And so you're just a wet noodle and you're really not growing them to their full potential. There has to be that positive, I think they call it a stress or something like that, where it's a good stress as opposed to a negative stress. So it seems like that's really what you're talking about here.
Yeah. And the other way that I would describe it too is I tend to look at what I call like the mistakes or the imbalances people make in their approach with authenticity. And I think, you know, on one side of it, people will say, well, you know, I am who I am, you know, take it or leave it. And, you know, they come off as kind of a jerk, right? They can be rude and callous. And so that's kind of the one side of it where your ego is maybe a little bit higher. And then there's the other side of it where you're a people pleaser. Mm-hmm. And that's not doing your customers any favors either. I mean, you might think it initially, but you're not pushing them in their jobs and in their businesses either. So, you know, if you kind of fall on either side of those, you're going to be struggling. So that's where, to me, this is kind of a confidence discussion. Like, it's an ego over ego versus like the people pleasing. And that's where, for me, it comes together in the middle, where we need to be humble, but we also need to be confident in our abilities.
Yeah. And so, yes, we're talking about this from a perspective of sales, but it also goes, this is the same perspective from mentoring, managing, leadership, because really what you're talking about is, can you have, talked about it a little bit ago, but the idea of Kim Scott wrote a book called Radical Candor. Can you be radically candid with somebody that you care so much about them that you're willing to speak truth to them, even if it makes you feel uncomfortable? And unfortunately, whenever you're in a selling perspective, there's a local guy here, Adam Polowski or something like that. I've just butchered his last name, but he talks about provocative sales, right? We have to be provocative to drive that curiosity and almost shove right in their face of, hey, do you have these challenges? And, oh yeah, I do, because they don't want to own up to it. And so really the caring thing to do is be provocative in a caring way, an authentic way to truly help them. And they go, no, I don't have any of those. Oh, thank heavens. You'll likely know somebody who does. You know, who should I talk to that has these? Because we had the cure, right? So it's kind of that simple, but that's going to be others focused. If you're sitting there worried about, oh my gosh, I need to make my month. Oh my gosh, I'm going to get fired if I don't get my meeting. Oh my gosh, right? It's all inward focused, and we're not going to do what it takes to serve them. And if you have the commission breath because you're so inward focused, it's not going to turn out terribly well, right? I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen that before.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I love that commission breath. I think one of the things too, I think one of the challenges with sales is that sometimes our incentives aren't aligned with the behaviors that we want to drive. And so if you are that internally focused and you are so focused on, you know, making your numbers for that month or commission, and not kind of the long-term perspective of keeping a customer for a long time, then, you know, you're going to run into challenges because you're only thinking about you and you're not thinking about them.
Yeah. Now, so help us out. We're brand new. Yeah. We're a veteran. We find that, you know, call it a high need for approval. I'd rather be liked than win, right? We have a high need for approval. We're brand new into sales.
Yeah.
How can we find our voice? How can we find our authentic self?
Yeah. So, I mean, I talk a lot about innate strengths. So I think that's what you need to kind of do first, is figure out what are you already good at that can help you build trust with those customers. And I often recommend looking back at different experiences, not just sales experiences. Look outside. Like, what were you good at in high school? What did you enjoy? What do people praise you for? What do they say? Wow, like, I really wish I was that engaging, or I really wish that, you know, I was that good at speaking or something like that. Look back to those kind of past experiences to inform what you are good at and where your strengths are going to be. And then once you figure out what your strengths are, that's really what's going to make a difference with your customers. Because like, I'll be honest, Brian, you know, from Gallup to Gartner to Harvard to HubSpot, there are tons of articles out there and tons of research about what it takes to be great at selling. What I have found is that all of those characteristics about what makes somebody great at selling, those all kind of go back to things like conscientiousness, to grit, to being very highly organized, to being communicative. And I would venture a bet that everybody has at least one of those strengths, at least one of those skills that is going to make them great at selling. And so once you lean on that, then that's what you're going to be known for. That is what your customers are going to start to trust in you. And so that opens up the door to be able to push them outside of their comfort zone. It opens up the permission, gives you permission to be able to test them.
Got it. So really then it's be you, and be okay that not everyone is going to be fine with you, right? Because if I sell product A and another person sells product A and another person yet sells product A, and we all have different styles, one might like mine, one will definitely hate it. One will like, the other person, and the other two will hate it, right? So it just really, you're going to have a match for everyone. You walk around and you're like, oh my gosh, that person's actually married. How does that happen? Right. So there's a match for everyone. So geez Louise. All right. I love it. So, hey, let me, I'll share hopefully a funny, embarrassing story here that might help frame this a little bit. So back in the day, I worked with a guy by the name of Sean Coyle, and Sean Coyle was likely one of the best cold calling, prospecting people that you've ever met. He had a great voice. He just knew exactly what to do, right? And so I tried to be Sean Coyle. And there was another guy by the name of Ray Muchler. I tried to be Ray Muchler, and I was failing miserably. So what I ended up having to do is I took their language, I took their methodologies, and I adapted it to who I am, my personality, my style. And once I took that methodology and that system and adapted it to my authentic self, and I was fine with it, it really started to take off for me. So I can't encourage you enough. Take the time to self-discover. Take some assessments, for goodness sakes. Take the DISC, take the predictive index, take the, we sell outmatch, right? So find out what you're really good at. Strength Finder, Colby, I don't care. Just figure it out. Ask your friends, interview people, and really do this, because I'm telling you, if you figure this out, it doesn't matter what your position is, you're going to be able to do well, because it all boils down to the same things that you just talked about. It's the grit. It's the interpersonal ability. Can I quickly connect with people? Can I build an environment of trust, comfort, and credibility at a peer-to-peer level, because they know they can trust me because I am authentic? And if you can do that, amen, hallelujah, you won.
Yeah. And those aren't just sales skills either, right, Brian? I mean, those are skills that any of us try and build over like the course of our career, but those are skills that you start building from toddlerhood, So I feel like, we put a lot of emphasis on what it takes to be a great sales rep, and great sales reps are born. And I don't buy it. I think that there's a stereotype we have in our heads that we try and copy. And then when we try and copy it and it doesn't work out, we say, I'm not good at sales. I'm no good at this. Like you talked about who, Sean, who you were copying. For me, it was Jerry. And he was the kind of guy who would spend, the first 55 minutes of a 1 hour meeting just talking about sports and small talk, and then get down to business for the last 5 minutes. He was great. He made the sales, he made the business. But when I tried to copy him, I lost the complete confidence of my customers. They
100%.
So I had to go back and I had to rewrite the plan and say, okay, you know what, doing the exact same things that he was doing is not going to work for me. And so I got to figure out how to what the results are that I want to get, and then work it backwards in a way that'll work for me. Yeah,
because if Jerry got in front of me, that would never have flown. He would have been out on his ear. I mean, you waste my time. It just drives me insane. Whereas others, if you're like me and you just want to get down to business, they're going to throw me out of my ear because I don't want to try to build up relationships. So you have to know the person you're in front of and be able to adapt. So, oh my gosh. All right. So a lot of good stuff here. So, help us avoid challenges, right? How can we avoid some of the pains and frustrations that you went through? What's something that whacked you, that really hurt, that you can maybe teach us that we can avoid that same struggle or same frustration, please?
Yeah, I mean, so I think for me, one of the biggest challenges that I've had is making that move from selling a product or service for a company to becoming an entrepreneur and selling something that is me, that is, you're selling yourself.
Okay.
And I think I got tripped up a lot. Like I've been working at this for probably 3 or 4 years now, and I'm just starting to get some traction. But when I look back at why things didn't take off as quickly as I'd hoped for, the reason was me. So the reason was, not holding myself accountable, and not having that bias for action that I would say I usually have in the other parts of my life. So for anybody who's kind of making a jump, moving from one type of selling to another, or even if you're just coming into sales at the beginning, I think you need to surround yourself with role models and with mentors and friends who are going to hold you accountable, and who, I guess, will help enable you to find your selling style and not kind of focus on pushing you towards those kind of inauthentic or the kind of slimy feeling tactics.
So
Yeah.
that's interesting. You said two things there. I want to come back to the one, but let me hit the one piece which is key.
Yeah.
You said it's my fault, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we cannot take ownership, so on my bookshelf behind me, I have extreme ownership.
Oh, yeah.
If you are playing victim, if it's woe is me, I mean, let's face it, 2020, has been a disaster.
Yeah.
Social unrest, racial strife, economic collapse, millions of people laid off. I mean, you name it. We have killer bees coming at us, for goodness sakes. I mean, it is insane. So what? What are you going to do? Are you going to allow that to be the excuse for not getting where you want to be? You're right. Are you just going to tuck and roll? You're going to suck your thumb on the side of the road and say, woe was me. 2020 was mean to me. Or are you going to take ownership of it and say, oh my gosh, this is hard. I have to now work harder than everyone else. I have to out problem solve because of this, right? So if you get nothing more out of this session here today, take that. Take ownership. It was my fault, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, guess what? It's your fault. It is, right? If that buyer doesn't buy, your fault. If your spouse is angry at you, your fault, right? Yeah, she could have been in a bad mood or he could have been in a bad mood, but your fault for not adapting, right? So if you always take ownership of it, you now can do something about it, learn and improve. But if I'm victim, I can't do anything about it. So that's one thought. So I monologue there for a bit. Sorry. Any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I'm a full believer in taking ownership for our actions, but and I think especially this year it can be tough. The one thing I will say is that I think that as a sales rep and stuff, we need to push. So there's that pushing past it, that bias for action and the taking ownership for things. The other side of it too is that you have to have patience with yourself too. I mean, part of the reason for me personally why, I have been a bit slower on my business these past 3 years is because I had 2 kids during that time frame.
Yeah.
So, things change, like outside of just COVID, you're in your life. We moved across the country too, but I was falling back on that. And I was saying, okay, I know I got to push past this, but I also know that at this point in my life, I have to be forgiving of myself too. And I have to be a little bit patient with what's going on as well.
Yeah. And maybe another way of saying that is you've reprioritized.
Yeah.
Right. Because as long as you are legitimate in your reprioritization and it's not excuse making, I like that. Now, you said something curious about the change from selling a product to service. I'm curious as to what your sense is the change of going from product to service has been?
Yeah, and I guess I mean more in terms of going from selling something that is something else's. Like, I was selling motor oil, right?
Right.
So, I mean, that's not something that I'm necessarily super passionate about, motor oil, but I enjoyed sales. I enjoyed the customers that I work with, and so going from selling something that you're not as, I guess, invested in, to selling something now that is something that I'm very passionate about, that I truly believe in, helping people develop their authentic selling style, helping people figure out what their strengths are, and changing the mindsets around the reputation of sales. That is a very big transition. And I find that you take the losses a bit more personally when the product or service, when the thing that you're selling is personal to you.
Okay, so it's not necessarily selling styles, tactics, or anything like that. It's my level of I don't want to say investment, but yeah. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Well, all right. So really, what you said is your biggest challenge or lesson learned for us is get accountability partners, be
Yeah.
self-accountable. Okay, got it. Now, how about a business hack? I mean, what's one suggestion you might give around either talent, how to hire these authentic sellers, sales, how to create these authentic sellers, or
Yep.
scaling a business? How do we do that? What's one trick or tip that you might give us?
So I'm going to focus on the hiring side of things. I used to do some of the hiring for our business too. And so I was watching a movie recently. Don't judge me. It was Hustlers. And at one point in this movie, one of the women is trying to get a job in retail sales. And the person who's interviewing her is saying, well, we really wanted somebody with retail sales experience. And so I think we do the same thing in all of our sales hiring. We want to hire somebody who has great sales experience, who has done it before, who has proven themselves. But my theory is that the people who are really good at sales just don't know that they're selling yet. Yeah. So my hack or my tip or trick is, when you're looking to hire talent, and especially when you're looking to hire more of a diverse talent pool, more women, more people of different backgrounds, I would say broaden your horizons, or broaden your where you are looking and who you are looking for. Don't just go out and try and pull in those people who are already sales reps, who are considering a role in sales. I think there are a lot of people out there who maybe have a customer service background, who maybe started their own business as a kid, who don't really realize that they're selling, but could be very, very talented at it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, it's one of the key things that we, part of our core competency is hiring, right? Talent. And constantly, time and time and time again, if you find somebody that's innately able to sell, it's a lot easier to teach the service or the product or whatever. That's a lot easier. Yeah. So wholeheartedly agree with that one. Now, how about books, resources that you recommend, podcasts, guides? What should we be looking at? Where should we be learning?
Yeah. So, I mean, you've already mentioned a couple of my favorites, but I think To Sell is Human by Dan Pink, it should be the first book that anybody who's going into sales reads, because it really provides a different perspective. I also love The Challenger Sale by Brent Adamson and Matt Dixon. Okay. And I'm actually reading Radical Candor right now by Kim Scott. So I'm very much enjoying that.
Nice.
And then on the podcast side of things, I like to listen to different podcasts. So things like just outside of just the sales sphere. So a couple of them that I really enjoy are NPR's Hidden Brain with Shankar Vedantam. And I also really love, and this one's personal to me, but Conscious Business with the Corporate Yogi. So Julie Zuzek, who runs that podcast, she was my coach and helped me through a lot of slip ups that entrepreneurs kind of have. And and there's a couple other people out there too. Margaret Weniger has the Rising Tide podcast. She talks about women's stories. I also love Adam Grant's Work Life podcast too.
Okay, nice. You're a podcast junkie. I love it.
I am. And so actually, Brian, I was hoping that we could talk about something, because what episode are you on now with your podcast?
This is early 30s.
Okay, early 30s. So at the beginning of the episodes, you always ask, why the heck should we listen to you?
Yeah.
So as a podcast junkie and aficionado myself, I wanted to throw it back on you, Brian. Why the heck should we listen to this podcast?
Oh no. So she's throwing it back on me. So,
I,
well, I'll go back to my old sailor days. Well, maybe you shouldn't. However, oftentimes the people who want to listen to this are impassioned about entrepreneurship. They want to, they not only want to do well in entrepreneurship, but they want communities to thrive and grow from great entrepreneurships. And really the 3 of the 4 headwinds that you can work on to have a functioning, thriving business is great, getting top talent, giving them the ability to sell, and being able to scale that business. I can't deal with cash flow management. I'm not a finance guy, CFO, so I can't do that. But 3 out of 4 ain't half bad. So maybe that's why you should listen.
mm-hmm. I love it.
How's that?
I love it. I love it. And I mean, I've listened to your podcast too, and I've loved it too. I love the conversation that you have.
I appreciate that. It means a lot. I've been having a lot of fun with this. So, all right. So, last couple of things is pull out the magic 8 ball. I mean, What's the future hold? What's going to bite us in the tail? What do we need to watch out for?
Okay. So I'm going to take an optimistic view, or what I would consider an optimistic view, on the future of sales and the selling profession. And I think the reputation of sales is going to change. So I think we still have this kind of hangover from, the door-to-door vacuum salesman of the past. And, people think of sales and they have an aversion to it just because of those old stereotypes. What I think is happening, what I see is happening, is that marketing is kind of coming in and taking over more of that kind of initial outbound outreach, and taking it and making it more inbound. So I think the people who in the future will be really successful at sales are the ones who are going to be able to connect well with their customers, who are going to be able to help their customers manage through complex issues, are more consultative in their approach. And so I think that trend is going to lead to a situation where we, a few years down the road, look back and we say sales is a respected profession to be in. It's a respected career. And we're going to have a lot more people coming out of school and looking to sales as an option for them, and something that they can do that feels authentic to them as well.
Very interesting. So you're saying the future holds authentic problem solvers.
I think so.
Nice. Professional, authentic problem solvers. I'll take it. All right, Lindsay. So, hey, listen, thanks so much for being on. So who should reach out to you? How should they do it? And why should they reach out to you?
Yeah. So if you have a panel, if you have a workshop, if you're looking to hire a different voice to come speak to your sales organization, please reach out to me. If you're a person in sales that's just started, or like you said, is a veteran, has, a long time history in sales, but has a feeling that you want to change things up, reach out to me as well too. Let's start having a conversation. And the best way to get a hold of me is on LinkedIn. So Lindsay Lackner Davey on LinkedIn, because I have, 1 foot in, 1 foot out of the changing your name after you're married thing. And it's been 7 years, so I really am straddling that line. But yeah, LinkedIn is the best place to find me. I also have a website, AuthenticSales.com, so you can go there and grab my email as well.
Awesome. So Lindsay Lackner, Davey, straddling. That's a long straddle. 7 years. It's got to get uncomfortable. Geesh. So, hey, everyone, thanks so much. So on behalf of Lindsay and the Authentic Sales, this is Brian Whittington with the Talent Sales and Scale Show signing off. Listen, gang, get after it. Entrepreneurship is so vitally important. And what drives entrepreneurship is really talented people, the ability to sell and the ability to scale and use those finances to keep driving back into the business and doing great things for the community. So let's make that happen. Let's make it a fun rest of this year. So get after it. Thanks, everyone. See ya.